even if the budget is literally $0, there are still things that you can do to put a benefits package together for your staff. So don't ever let the budget hinder you from offering something that you want to offer. Vet that out and let somebody help you put something together that's going to benefit you as a ministry in the long run and your staff in the short run.
Let's talk about people. The people who work for your ministry are doing so because they are devoted to a calling to care for others, to serve. But how are they being served by your ministry when it comes to employee benefits? This is a very important question. Are you being a good steward of how you're taking care of them so that they can effectively, freely take care of others? So we're going to talk today with Jestin Davis from Lightwell in the state of Ohio about structuring a great employee benefits plan for ministries. Let's get right into our conversation with Jestin. Well, it is my pleasure to be joined by Jestin Davis. He is the Employee Benefits Director for Lightwell in the state of Ohio. Jestin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Pleasure.
So let's lay the groundwork as simply as this. What are some of the core components of a ministry package when it comes to employee benefits?
Yeah, that's a good question. When it comes to benefits for ministries, I think there's really three key pillars that you need to be aware of. And typically we'll start with health insurance, which is the medical portion. That's a lot of times that's a driver for any ministry looking at shopping benefits. The second pillar would be your ancillary coverage. So dental, vision, life, accident, disability, all your miscellaneous coverages when it comes to benefits. And that third pillar is typically your retirement. So that can take multiple forms, but that's really the three core pillars that we see when we look at employee benefits as a whole.
That's great. And when you describe those sound like pretty normal aspects of a package policy around employee benefits, but are there things that are distinct in the ministry world that make it different from, say, nonprofit or corporate packages?
Yeah, there's definitely some key things when it comes to a ministry that they need to be aware of. And a lot of times your traditional benefits broker or advisor may not be aware of the dynamics going on under the hood, so to speak, when you look at a ministry, how they're structured as far as tax structure and entity itself. Some of those things are like the pastoral housing allowance, for example, that needs to be factored in multiple different places when we think about those three pillars. The income levels for staff really factor in as well, especially when we're talking about medical coverage and looking at health insurance and what's available to them. It actually opens up some doors as far as, for example, marketplace plans and what that might look like versus a standard group plan that, typically if we're working with a for-profit business doesn't really come into play. But when you throw in the element of the ministry, it does change things a bit.
That's very helpful. Now, when you're speaking with ministries, are there things that are common misconceptions they have about offering benefits to their employees? Like how much are you actually educating ministries on what they need to offer?
The biggest one that I see is it's too expensive. So a lot of times they want to offer benefits. They know they should offer benefits. It's the right thing to do for the staff, for your employees, for your pastor, but they think it's too expensive. And certain plans, that could be true. It could be too expensive. But really where we start as far as the education piece is what does that budget look like and what can we do with that? So again, there's different dynamics going on within that ministry typically where we can leverage certain plans, certain products that really fit nicely in different, budgets, whether it's minimal, I mean, as low as zero, literally $0 out of pocket for the ministry
Wow.
to offer something on up. So we can work in really that whole range. And I think that is the number one thing that I bump up against on a daily basis is they really want to do something, but they don't feel like the budget's there to do it. And it's not true.
So you're saying basically that when you're speaking with ministries, if budget is the concern, there are options. They just need to ask the right questions or work with the right kind of specialist to understand what those options are.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going in saying, "Hey, we'd like a group health plan," and you engage a broker and that's what they're shopping and that's the only thing that they're looking at, it very well may be too expensive for your ministry. But if you're going in saying, "Hey, we'd like to offer health insurance to our staff. What's the best way to go about that?" Then that opens the door to see what's available and what we can do for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would imagine that this is a concern or a thought that probably comes up a lot with smaller ministries. Ministries that don't have a big staff or a big budget might think, does this even apply to me? How does this work? So how can a small ministry still offer meaningful benefits to their employees?
Yeah, that's a great point, and that is another misconception that you can't have group benefits with, a couple employees, which you actually can. A lot of carriers will go down all the way to 2, and there's even some exceptions for a single, employee. So, really, yeah, the door is pretty wide, and that can be part of the problem when you're trying to piece a benefits package together, that there's so much out there. You really need to understand the dynamics and how they work together. Again, kind of that three pillar system of, the health insurance, the ancillary, and then the retirement. Looking at the holistic program, what is the budget for that benefits program? And then how do we back into the different coverages and benefits that you want to offer as a ministry? So yeah, it's definitely available to even those churches that just have one pastor on staff and a couple part-time employees. It just that changes things a little bit.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Let's key in on then one of those pillars. Let's talk about health insurance in particular. Are there things that you see that are trends in this area for ministries or even just in general that might apply to ministries in the health benefits pillar of that?
Yeah, there's a couple trends I would say that are starting to bubble to the top as far as the health insurance goes. It From what I'm seeing, it seems like the health sharing option was a really good plan when the ministry looked at it originally, but those costs have continued to rise, just like healthcare in general, that and with inflation and everything, those plans have continued to go up in price. And another misconception is that those are always going to be less expensive than a group plan. So, as an example, we've actually moved a Christian school from that type of plan structure to a level funded plan, which is kind of a hybrid model of a traditional fully insured plan and a self insured plan. So, without getting into the weeds too deep, it's allowed them to offer a traditional style health plan to their employees at the same cost of a health sharing plan, which is much different in how you actually engage with, you go to the doctor, you have a copay versus saying, "Hey, I don't have coverage." So that's a trend that I'm seeing quite a bit. The other one being the marketplace. So the marketplace for health plans has been something that I think a lot of people fell back on as a last resort, but that's typically where I will start just to see what that looks like for that organization and that ministry. With the subsidies and the premium offsets, a lot of times those plans can be paired with, say, an HSA, and a very, very cost effective, and depending on the income levels of the ministry staff, those can be really effective. And then you can use that budget more effectively. So again, kind of starting with what's the budget, what does that look like, and how do we back into that and get the best bang for your buck for the ministry?
Excellent. Yeah, that's really good. Now, another one of those pillars would be retirement planning. So How does that factor into this? What are the aspects or the elements of effective retirement planning benefits that you see for ministries wanting to take good care of their employees and help them plan for that?
Yeah, when it comes to retirement, I think it's a little bit more cut and dry than, say, health insurance. There's a lot of dynamics with health insurance, but really the driving factor is how much do you want to contribute to the employee retirement and what plan makes the most sense. When you get into larger groups, it a lot of times it's more cost effective to do a group retirement plan. But to your earlier point, when you're working with a church that say has 3 people on staff full time, then a group plan is going to be a little bit more pricey, and we can probably do something at the individual level through the church or through the ministry, through the school, whatever that looks like at the individual level. And again, get more bang for your buck, get more of those dollars into their account versus paying for administering a large plan that's maybe not needed. So I think it's obviously case by case, but that's really where you would start on the retirement side is understanding what does that look like? What do contributions look like? And then understand what structure works the best. To piggyback on that, the other dynamic is that pastoral housing allowance. So that should factor into your planning as well. And that's probably another podcast, Adam, to be honest. We could go deep into the weeds on that, but really just having that in the planning that needs to happen. And then you can kind of work around that because not everybody's a pastor typically on staff, whether it is a church or a school. You may have a handful, and it could be everybody is, licensed pastor. That does happen, but a lot of times there is an admin or there is a somebody on staff that's not a pastor. So we need to factor that in as well. It's not again. There's a lot of dynamics going on within the ministries that need to be accounted for when you're doing this type of planning.
That's I mean, it's so true in the ministry setting to think about all of the different ways that their employment status or their title and if they're ordained and what that means about taxes. Like you said, it's another podcast, which I would be so happy to have you back on, but there's a lot of nuance here. It's not just one thing. And so I appreciate you just even highlighting the fact that there is nuance because I think it's an empowering thing for ministries to just know we have questions that need good answers so that we make a great plan for our employees. So those are all important considerations. And that even speaks to recruiting and retention of ministry employees. I know for me, when there's a good benefit plan at the place where I work, it's like having more income. It's a big part of what, made me want to join and made me want to stay the place where I currently work. So, how does that impact ministry recruitment and retention of employees to have a good plan?
Yeah, well, you nailed it. When you have a nice benefits package for your employees, it's going to help that retention level. It's going to attract new talent. And, depending on the ministry type, for example, if you look at a Christian school, they are competing with public schools. Obviously, if they're looking to come on staff, they have a heart for that ministry and they're probably a good fit. But at the same time, they're making financial decisions for their family. And if we can help them build out that benefits package that addresses those financial concerns, then that's going to help the school grow. That's going to help them attract new talent. It's going to keep everybody that they have. Hopefully, we can add to that. So, I think the other thing that goes a little bit under the radar when it comes to the benefits side is actually marketing those benefits to both your current employees and potential employees. So that's something that I think, whether it's your broker, your advisor, whoever you're working with, they should have a hand in helping HR slash, admin, whoever you're working with, help them to highlight those benefits that they're offering and help them understand where that fits. So that the school or church, for example, they could have a great benefits offering, but that might not be highlighted until the very end of the interview process, where, to your point, that should help attract new talent. So I think, whoever you're working with needs to have a good grasp on what you're offering and then help you to market that as well and use that as a tool rather than a kind of an aside. Oh, by the way, we offer this.
Right, right. As a part of almost the onboarding process, you've gotten too far into the process for them to to feel like, oh, should I say no to this because I don't love the benefits package? So let me ask another question about like just the idea of marketing a benefits plan. Are the best ways you're seeing that on to be proactive about it in like hard copy deliverables? Is it in-person meetings? Are those like video trainings that they can send to people they're recruiting or that are in the interview process? How do you market a benefits plan?
It could be all of the above. I think it really depends on the ministry itself, and what their structure is. Are they all in person, or is there some remote folks? How large is the group? But those touch points are key. So, whoever you're working with should be available uh, at onboarding, obviously, and at renewal time. But, if it is a larger group, being on site, having somebody on site, whether it's semi-annual or quarterly, if it is a large retirement account, just having that FaceTime with employees, being available. And now with, we're doing this podcast remotely, right? So, we can do meetings over, Teams or Zoom or whatever your platform of choice is. And having those, I would say, quote unquote, office hours available, I think is big when people are looking to come on board to an organization and they know that they're going to have support on the benefits side. And then the other piece of that is empowering the HR director or administrator or whomever is handling the benefits to really be knowledgeable in what you are offering.
Yeah, that's very good. A lot of good tips in that. So I hope that ministries are able to feel empowered to take steps on that. Now, here's another what I hope is very empowering answer for ministry leaders. How can they evaluate how their current plan is serving their employees? What are the metrics or feedback loops that they can think, is this doing a good job? And if we need to improve, how do we improve?
Yeah, that's tough. That's a great question because a lot of times a good plan doesn't necessarily warrant a lot of feedback. So it's kind of like no news is good news a lot of
Right.
times. So I think, yeah, there's steps that you can take. And I know the organizations that really do a good job are getting that feedback on a regular basis. So, somebody had a medical claim, getting feedback on how was that handled, how did it go? Because really, on our side, we act as the broker. So if something didn't go well, that's information that we want to take back to that carrier. And hopefully they'll take it and use it to get better. But if not, then it might be time to reevaluate the carrier on, whatever line of business. If it's medical, for example, well, maybe it's time to shop that plan if we're not having a good experience. So without that feedback loop, to your point, you don't really know, how well a plan is going. But I do think that one of the other things, as far as evaluating, is just having somebody take a look under the hood of how that plan is running. What are the different deductible amounts, for example, when it comes to health? Um, how is it structured? And is that the most cost effective way to structure that benefits package for that ministry? So having somebody that you trust take a look at it that does work in that ministry space, I think makes a ton of sense. Obviously that's where we live and breathe. So we're kind of touting ourselves a little bit there, but there's others, that are out there. So work with somebody that understands your unique situation. And I would say on an annual basis is good. At a minimum, every other year, you really need to take a deep look at what rates are you getting, where are you at, what does the structure look like? Because as we know, the landscape is always evolving. So you have these different, especially on the health side, again, like a level funded plan. It's something that not a lot of people have heard about if they've been on a traditional fully insured plan for a long time and everything's been good. But if you look at, that versus, a different structure, it might behoove them to move over to that structure. Or if they have a good rate and the carrier likes the risk, maybe they are in the best place. But you really need to take that into account when you're looking at your plan year over year.
Excellent. And also, I would just say from my own personal experience, and I've never had benefits through a ministry that I've worked for, but the experiences that I have seen or I've experienced myself, when someone is surprised by how their benefits operate, that's a bad deal. And so being very clear on the front end, this is how things should work. But then I would say having cadences in place. Maybe it's annually where you're talking with your staff annually. How did this all go for you this year? Or maybe it's, on a case by case reaction to a claim. I think you mentioned that. How did that particular claim process work? Was it what you expected? Because this thing, nobody knows everything about their benefits plan, and it's one of those things like you said. No news is good news. If I don't have to use it, it's working great. And so, just that feeling that once I do have to use it, there were no surprises, or if there were surprises, someone cares and they're asking me so that it improves for the next time around. I think those are all good ideas that you're speaking to as well. Okay, so let's we're getting down toward the end here, Justin, but let's just say that a ministry is beginning to build out their benefits plan. What's a key piece of advice on getting started? How can they start that process well?
When a ministry is looking to start a new plan, I think the biggest thing that I always point back to is, what does that budget look like? And if there's a board or if there's elders that need to be involved in that process to understand what that looks like going in, that is the biggest driver of what you're going to be able to offer. And knowing that, again, on our side, knowing that going in, I can better put a plan together that meets that budget requirement and the benefits need, versus getting down the line where we have a great plan put together and it doesn't get passed through the board or through the elders or whomever's making that decision. And rightfully so. If they have a number in mind, that's totally fine. And we want to respect that. But knowing that on the front end allows someone like us to help the ministry make informed decisions along the way to piece it together. Because typically we're talking about, at least two different companies or carriers involved, if not more. So it's not an off the shelf thing where we're just saying, hey, here's the product. We're piecing it together to make the best plan for that ministry. So again, knowing that budget going in is critical, and then understanding what they'd like to offer. What's a best case scenario? And we're going to try to get there. And if we fall a little short, it's going to fall within budget and you're still going to be offering more than you were prior. So that's really what I would say is get everybody on board, make sure everybody that's in the decision-making process is really bought into what they'd like to offer as far as both budget and benefits. And then let somebody like ourselves go in there, build it out with you as a collaborative process, and then take it to them for the final approval.
I like the idea that ministries, because they are unique, they're not off the shelf. And so their staff isn't probably the same as the staff of the church down the street or across town. So the needs that they have for their employee benefits are different as well. So because they're not off the shelf, they shouldn't just expect that an off the shelf product will work for them. So I think that I love what you're saying because again, it's that empowering message that we're wanting to deliver to ministries to say, it's good to ask questions about this. It's good to get proactive communication with your elder board, with your executive team, or whoever makes these decisions so that you can say, here are the unique needs we have. Here's our staff. Here's what our staff presents. How do we get a plan that matches that? And not just start with the plan and work backwards and see if it applies to your staff. So I would love to make sure to make the most of your time and not leave anything unsaid. Is there anything, Justin, that I have missed that you would love to share with ministries today?
I'll just go back to one of the first points that you and I talked about. Even if the budget is literally $0, there are still things that you can do to put a benefits package together for your staff. So don't ever let the budget hinder you from offering something that you want to offer. Vet that out and let somebody help you put something together that's going to benefit you as a ministry in the long run and your staff in the short run.
That's really good. I mean, many of these people that are working at ministries, they're making a sacrifice in so many other ways to devote themselves to a vocation that is in the service of a ministry, in the service of their community or of other people. They shouldn't then also have to sacrifice taking care of themselves or their family when it comes to benefits. And so it's incumbent on the ministries that employ them to take great care of them. And that's why I'm glad someone like you and others from around the Lightwell network are in the corner of ministries, making sure that those plans do exactly that. So Jestin Davis, Employee Benefits Director from Lightwell, Ohio, thank you very, very much for your time today and what you're doing for ministries out there.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
My thanks again to Jestin Davis from Lightwell in the state of Ohio, talking employee benefits for ministries today. My hope is that you were empowered by this conversation, that you got something that you feel like, I should think about that more, or maybe that's a question I can ask my insurance agent or my board of directors. But if you just need somewhere to start, you can go to lightwell.com and find out how to connect with an advisor in your area to begin a conversation about employee benefits. So until the next episode of the podcast, let's go and let it shine.